What's up, guys? This is Preview for Parallax Entertainment. Got the second part of the Shadow Priest 7.2 guide for you here. In this video, we're going to be touching on two main points. First, we are going to look at the stat priorities for Shadow Priest, and then we're going to jump into looking at the rotation. I'll break that down for you guys and show you how I do it. With all that being said, guys, let's go ahead and jump into the video. Let's do it. Alrighty guys, let's take a look at the stat breakdown for Shadow Priest in 7.2. First and foremost, and most importantly, is going to be haste, just as it has been all of Legion. If you guys have ever been, in a certain fight and wondering how come the other Shadow Priest is doing so much more damage than you, I can tell you right now, it's gonna be because they have a lot higher haste than you do. It is definitely the most important stat, should be the first one you are working on. And let's jump right in. I'll break down what exactly haste does for you. Alrighty guys, haste does two major things for the Shadow Priest. First thing that it's going to do is increase the amount of spell casting speed that we have. So basically we're going to be able to cast spells faster. This is going to allow us to burn through our rotation quicker and also allow us to get into void form sooner and stay in void form for longer. Obviously important in any casting class to be able to do your abilities faster is just going to help you put out more DPS, and like I said, help you get through your rotations sooner. The second main thing, and arguably far more important, that haste does for Shadow Priest is increases the tick rate of our dots. So our Shadow Word, Pain, and Vampiric Touch are going to tick faster and do more damage overall simply by just going off more times during a fight for the higher amount of haste we have. Most guides, and I'll definitely stick with this, say that your haste should roughly be about 12k or 32% before you hit your soft cap. Once you get up to that level, you're not going to notice a huge difference in casting speed or tick rate time. So once you get up to 12k, 32%, that's when you can start focusing on your other stats. Alrighty guys, and after we've got our haste up there, the next most important stat is definitely going to be mastery. What mastery does is directly increases the damage of our Shadow Word, Pain, Vampiric Touch, and Void Bolt. So the higher level of mastery we have, the more damage our dots are going to do, and the more damage that Void Bolt's going to do. This is our main ability when we're in Shadow form. But basically, just by having a higher level of mastery, the more damage that your main three abilities are going to put out will go up. So once we've gotten haste taken care of, definitely start putting some gear or maybe some gems towards getting your mastery a little bit higher. Just basically going to overall increase the amount of damage, like I said, that our dots and Void Bolt are going to do. Really just going to help put your damage up even higher. Alrighty guys, now that we looked at haste and mastery, we're just going to look at the rest of our stats on this list going down. It's going to be critical strike, intellect, and then versatility. So critical strike's obviously just going to increase our chance to crit with our spells and abilities. Pretty nice, just helps you do more damage, lets you hit targets harder. It's not going to be as important as haste or mastery, but once we are pretty full on haste and mastery, crit is definitely what you're going to want to work on next. Just help you do bigger hits and more damage overall. After that, the next most important stat is intellect. Now, we don't really have to worry about getting intellect. After 7.2, it definitely comes with a baseline intellect on all of your gear. So as long as you guys are out there pushing, mythic pluses or doing raiding, and you are actually picking up new gear, you are going to continually, to gradually get more and more intellect by simply just getting higher item level gear. And then the final stat we want to look at is going to be versatility. What this does is increases all your damage and healing done by a slight percentage, and also decreases the amount of damage that you take. Not very important compared to the other stats. Helps you do a little bit more damage, but really what this does is gives you more survivability, and in most cases you're going to have a healer with you, so it's not something you really have to worry about. However, if you find a piece that's high on haste or mastery, and the secondary stat on that piece is versatility, it's a nice thing to pick up. With that being said, guys, that's going to do it for the stats breakdown for the Shadow Priest 7.2. Let's go ahead now and jump over to the rotation part of this video. Alright guys, let's jump into the rotation part of the video. I'm just going to break down exactly how I run my rotation, the main things you guys should be focusing on. Some things to keep in mind for this part though is what legendaries you have. That will slightly affect your rotation, but let's jump into it. I'm going to show you guys the 2 legendaries that I have and how exactly I run my rotation with those legendaries. Let's do it. Alrighty guys, so just a quick little breakdown here of the 2 legendaries that I pretty much always run with. I use Zeke's, which is going to be the back piece. What this does is gives me a chance to proc an extra Shadow Word death, and it also increases the damage that this does by 100% and makes it usable on any target at any health level. Now, I use this for the main reason that it hits like a truck when it does crit with that extra 100%. I sometimes get crits off on this of over 2 million. Just really nice, hits really hard, does a lot of damage. The other and most important factor that I use this back piece for is that it actually helps me generate a lot more insanity through my rotations. And generating insanity is going to help me push into void form sooner and stay in void form for longer. So that's the reason I use the back piece. The other legendary that I use on most fights, any fights that have more than 1 target, is going to be the Ring, the Twins Painful Touch. What this does is, as soon as I enter void form, I get a little buff that allows me to spread my Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch up to 3 enemy targets within 10 yards. So what this does is allows me to spread my dots on other targets without actually having to dot them. This is super nice on multiple target fights because I don't have to take the time to actually click on each target and then put dots them. Basically, I dot 1 target, get into void form, and then I can instantly spread my dots on up to 3 other targets. Super nice. I always use that on multiple target fights. Alrighty guys, first and foremost, obviously super important, Shadow Priests are a dot class. First thing you're going to want to do is just immediately dot your targets. Like I said, I have the Twins Ring, so I don't dot all the targets right away. I usually just dot 1 and then push into void form. However, if you guys don't run that ring, you're definitely going to want to go ahead and dot all targets that are going to be alive for more than 6 or 7 seconds. It's definitely worth your time to dot these, that way you're getting damage off on these targets. It's going to help you generate more insanity as well. Now, one thing to keep in mind is on certain fights there's going to be ads that come out, and other class have a lot higher burst than Shadow Priests do, so they may be able to kill these ads in, less than 5 seconds. So if an ad is not going to be up for more than, like I said, 6 or 7 seconds, it's not going to be worth our time to switch over to that target and actually put dots on them, simply just because they're going to die too fast and we're not going to get very many ticks off, and it's going to just take away from DPS on other targets. So just keep that in mind, guys. We're going to want to go ahead and dot targets that are going to be alive for more than 6 or 7 seconds. If they're going to be alive for less than that amount of time, it's not worth it to dot them. Alrighty, and then other than dots, guys, the rest of the game for Shadow Priest rotation is about getting into void form as soon as possible and staying in void form for as long as possible. This is the most important part of our rotation. We've got a couple main spells that can do this for us. Mind Blast is going to generate 15 insanity. That's going to be our biggest single, insanity generator. So every time Mind Blast is up off a cooldown, we should be casting this every single time. Another thing that we need to look at is Mind Flay. Now this is our filler spell. If we don't have any other major cooldowns, we should always be casting Mind Flay. Our Mind Blast, dots, everything else like that's on cooldown. There's a little reset timer on them. We're going to want to cast Mind Flay in the meantime to do a filler. What this does is a little bit of AoE damage. It's kind of nice in that regard. It's not going to burst as high as other classes, but it does do some AoE damage. But more importantly, it is going to generate insanity. It generates 1 insanity per target per tick. So if we have multiple ads up and we're hitting it with Mind Flay, it's actually going to generate quite a bit of insanity as well as doing a bit of AoE damage. So if we're not, like I said, using any of our major cooldowns or other abilities, we're going to want to fill our time with Mind Flay. It's better to hit targets with this than simply just standing there waiting for cooldowns. Alrighty, next thing is going to be void form. Let's take a look at that. As you guys saw in my last video, I do run with Legacy of the Void, so I am able to push into Void form at 65 Insanity. We're going to want to go ahead and cast Void Eruption. This is our move that puts us into Void form. Once we get into Void form, it is super important to stay in Void form for as long as possible. Obviously, we're going to do more damage in this form, but really it's going to be for our stacks of Lingering Insanity. The higher amount of stacks is going to correlate to the longer amount of time you're in Void form for. Basically, the longer you can stay in Void form, you periodically get to do more and more damage. So like I said, it's super important to get into Void form as soon as possible and stay in Void form for as long as possible. Alright guys, and once we are in Void form, what we want to do is be casting Mind Blast, like I said before, every time that's up off a cooldown. And also, once we are in Void form, we'll get the ability Void Bolt. We want to be casting this also every time it's up off a cooldown. It has a pretty short reset when you're in Void form, so be clicking that as much as possible, as well as Mind Blast as much as possible. Now, the nice thing that they added in 7.1.5 is going to be that Void Bolt actually resets the timer on all of our dots. So basically, as soon as you get into Void form, the first thing you're going to want to do is get off of Void Bolt. That way it resets the timer on all your dots. We don't have to worry about reapplying dots in later parts of the fight. It's really nice. This helps us keep dots on targets the entire time without actually having to reapply them or recast those spells. So that's really nice. You want to cast Void Bolt and like I said, Mind Blast every time those two are up off a cooldown, especially in Void form. Alrighty guys, and then same as when we're not in Void form, when we are in Void form and all of our other, major spells and abilities are on cooldown, once again, you just want to go ahead and cast Mind Flay as your filler spell. Like I said, you don't want to just be standing there waiting for a cooldown. I always use Mind Flay every time that all my other abilities are down, like I said before, simply as a filler and also to help generate insanity. Now, casting Mind Flay isn't going to solely keep you in Void form, but it will help you maintain it for a little bit longer by, just generating a little bit of insanity in downtimes, like I said, when your other, major abilities are on cooldown. So just go ahead and cast Mind Flay, just as a filler in between other spells. Alright guys, and the other major thing I want to talk about is going to be Void Torrent. This is our, artifact weapon special ability. It's a castable spell that does major damage, really nice. The really controversial thing about this spell that I see between a lot of Shadow Priests is when exactly to use it. Now, a lot of people I see like to just use it, right after they get into Void form. Basically just helps them pump out a little more damage quicker. Now, this isn't always a bad thing if, you have, Lust or Heroism up, or you use your Power Infuse. I definitely suggest using that right away. However, it only has a 1-minute cooldown, and you're going to be using it when you don't have a haste buff up. So when I like to use Void Torrent is actually when I'm coming out of Void form. So when I'm running out of Insanity, it is a really nice tool to use, because when you are casting Void Torrent, your insanity loss actually pauses. So while you're casting that, you don't lose any insanity, and you actually do generate a little bit more, not from Void Torrent, but you actually generate it because your dots are still going off, and those generate, 1 insanity per tick. So you do build up a little bit more insanity, but the main reason I like to use Void Torrent when I'm running out of Void form is it actually helps me stay in longer, because it gives my other major cooldowns, Mind Blast and Void Bolt, a chance to reset their timers. That way, the second I'm done casting Void Torrent, I can pop off another Void Bolt, another Mind Blast, helps me stay in Void form a little bit longer, and gives me even higher stacks of Lingering Insanity. And as you guys see here in this video, there are some points where I can get close to like 50 stacks of Lingering Insanity. That is a huge haste buff, and basically the second I come out of Void form, I go through my rotation again, and because my haste is so high, my cast speed and tick rate so high, I'm generating a ridiculous amount of insanity very quickly. My downtime out of Void form is sometimes only a second or two, just because those Lingering Insanity stacks are so high. I can cast all of my abilities so fast and generate insanity so quickly that I push right back into Void form right away, and that's super important, guys, in helping you maintain and do higher damage overall. This is really helpful, at putting you on top of the charts, and like I've said, and like you'll hear me say again, the name of the game is about getting into void form as quickly as possible and staying in void form for as long as possible. Alright guys, and that's going to be the main abilities for a rotation. I just want to touch on a couple other things. Like we saw in the last video, we did choose Power Infuse. I just wanted to make a quick little note on that. You should be using Power Infuse at 2 spots. It's either going to be on certain fights, you do Lust or pop Heroism right at the beginning of the fight. You're going to want to go ahead and just pop Power Infuse right when you Lust. Just going to give you an extra haste boost, let you cast faster, push through your rotation even quicker. Just helps you, do and maintain more damage at the beginning of the fight. Now, there are certain fights where you don't use Lust right away. You're going to save it for a certain phase or for ads, something like that. In that case, you're going to want to use Power Infuse once you get into Void Form for the first time. So you're not going to use it right away, but once you get into Void Form the first time, that's when you want to pop Power Infuse. That helps you maintain Void Form for longer when you're in the first rotation of Void Form, and that helps you build Lingering Insanity, which will draw out to help you throughout the rest of the fight. Now, after that, you do have a 2-minute cooldown on Power Infuse. You're going to want to go ahead and just use Power Infuse every single time it's up after that. Every single time right off of cooldown. Basically just helps you get as many Power Infused buffs in during one fight as possible, because why not? You're getting that extra boost from it, you might as well get it as many times as possible during the fight. Another major cooldown that Shadow Priests do have that I wanted to just say a little bit about is Vampiric Embrace. This is just going to help you do increased healing to yourself or raid or party members. You're just going to use this at your own discretion. Just use it when a lot of AoE damage is going out, you feel like you're going to get close to dying, or maybe one of your tanks or some other people are close to dying. Just pop that off. It's going to help you do a little bit more healing on yourself and other members of your party. Helps your healers out and helps yourself out a little bit. Another thing I want to touch on is going to be Dispersion. Now this is your oh shit button, I'm about to die, or I'm standing in something I shouldn't, or I'm not getting enough healing. Basically just want to pop that off to help yourself stay alive. Obviously if you die during a fight you can't do any more damage, so popping Dispersion, you should definitely be using that if you're even remotely close to dying, or feel like you are going to die soon, or you can't get out of something fast enough. Just pop Dispersion to increase your survivability and stay alive. That way you can continue to do damage throughout the fight. And last couple small abilities I just want to talk about here. One is going to be Shadow Fiend, just a little guy that pops out and does extra damage for you, or if you're spec'd into it, helps you generate more insanity. Just pop this right at the beginning of the fight, and then also every time it's up. Like I said, just helps you do a little more damage, and if you are spec'd into it, will help you generate some more insanity. I also did spec into Mind Bomb. Basically, you just want to coordinate this with your party members, especially if you're in like a Mythic Dungeon, Mythic Plus, those kind of things. Just figure out when they want you to stun, or what's the best time to use that. Just coordinate with your team. Just use that at your own discretion. And then last thing I did want to just touch on, you guys will get certain trinkets or rings that do certain abilities. Just kind of work it through your rotation, try it out at some different times, see when it works best for you. More often than not, you're going to want to use these abilities during burst phases, like when your team pops Lust or Heroism, or if it's on a shorter cooldown, only a minute or two. I usually suggest popping these special abilities every time you use Power Infuse, or certain trinkets do AoE damage. You're going to want to just time this to when there's the most ads out. It really helps you just do more overall damage. But with all that being said, guys, that is going to do it here for the rotation part of the video. And I just want to do a quick little recap, guys, here before we end. Just make sure you're donning targets right away and always, and any target that's going to be alive for more than 6 or 7 seconds. Make sure we're using Mind Blast every time that's up off a cooldown, and make sure we're using Mind Flay both in and out of Void Form as a filler. Once we do get into Void Form, we're going to want to using, once again, Mind Blast every time it's off cooldown, also using Void Bolt every time it's off a cooldown, and then make sure we're timing Void Torrent either with, Lust or Burn phase, or using it to maintain Void Form and stay in a little bit longer. And then make sure, guys, we're using those other little, cooldowns and abilities we have going through, like I broke down before. Just find a good spot for those guys. And the last thing I just want to say, you guys can say it with me, boys and girls, Shadow Priest is all about getting into void form as quickly as possible and staying in void form for as long as possible. With that being said, guys, that's gonna do it today for our video. Thank you so much for watching. If this helped you guys out, please drop a like down below. Any comments or anything like that you guys have, drop those down below as well. Please make sure you subscribe to Parallax Entertainment, and remember, hit that little bell next to the subscribe button. We'll let you know every time a new video comes out. And make sure you guys check out our other videos on our channel here. And also, if you didn't see the first part of this, the Shadow Priest talents you should be choosing, make sure you guys go check that out as well. Alrighty guys, this was Pre for Parallax Entertainment. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, make sure you keep dotting those targets and make sure you're staying in void form for as long as possible. Alrighty guys, we'll see you in the next one.